And welcome back to NAFCOC's 54th conference taking place at the Nkosi Albert Luthuli Conference Centre here in Durban, and of course also known as the ICC. So we are in discussion about access to finance for small businesses, and it's been quite interesting, the discussion that has unfolded, and we will also talk about the land question, land expropriation, but we're going to wrap this one up first. And let me just go back to Dr. Mahanjana about the access to markets. You heard what the Minister's advisor had to say about this matter, but I'll take your final thoughts and then everybody else's as well.
Yes, thanks, Sakin. I couldn't agree more with Dr. Mazwai. As I said, people are open to join SIZWE now. Anyone can join SIZWE. But before you join SIZWE, usually employers decide which medical aids a person can belong to before you even choose what option and the medical aid. And as I've said, that SIZWE is black-run and black-managed medical scheme. And usually we know that most of the economy in South Africa is white-controlled. So some of the employers, they don't put SIZWE within the basket of schemes within their companies. So as the government, as Dr. Mazwai has said, that Afrikaner economic empowerment was very deliberate. So if the government is not deliberate on how they want to change the landscape for the market, businesses like SIZWE will suffer in this market because decision makers within the private sector are still white people. Also, so government also controls the state-owned enterprises. There's nothing stopping government to instruct them and to be deliberate about it, that why they don't support black businesses. They can support SIZWE and support the scheme and to be able to make it grow. Also, the other issue that has been, it's happening is that the regulator, which regulates the medical aid schemes, allowed some of the big players to escape with murder. For example, you've got one other competitor has been mentioned here. It's able to leverage on multiple brands. It's got the life, it's got the insure, it's got the scheme, but when it advertises, it can advertise as one of the other entities, but the health component will be able to benefit that. While the regulations, they say that the scheme and the administrator cannot have the same name. And the government has the power, has enacted the act since 1998, but they haven't acted on this big player. We just had a market inquiry report, which says that top two big schemes or medical schemes in South Africa, they've got over 70% market concentration, and they were dominated. And Dr. Mazwai mentioned that we need to deal with oligopolies and also the concentration tenders in South Africa, because if we don't deal with that, black businesses won't have access to the market. So we need to deal with anti-competitive behavior, the concentration, and also access to the market. But government needs just to stop talking and acting now, especially when they control also big sums of a market like SOE, which can give businesses and schemes like SIZWE access to the market. So in conclusion, I would say to me is that government regulation can assist, and also government needs to be deliberate in giving access to schemes like SIZWE, because it is black-owned and black-managed, and it was started by black doctors, and it stood the test of time since 1978. And some of the other founders is usually Dr. Ntato Mutlana. So we can't allow their vision and the legacy not to continue post-apartheid.
Thanks, Dr. Mahanjana. Mr. Mavundla, I want to come back to you. You sit here as president of an organization that is between 150 to 200,000 strong. And Mr. Mahanjana, Dr. Mahanjana spoke about government and its duty, but what about business and its duty towards itself? Why are businesses themselves also not assisting in this regard?
No, I can state very clearly that as NAFCOC, we would want to support and have even all these emerging companies as part of our organization as corporate members, but also at the same time for our members and their businesses to be part of them. But just I want to touch on something you spoke about in terms of regulations. There are some of the regulations that government have brought in the name of assisting small businesses that have had unintended consequences. In the early 90s, we were in construction. I built some of the projects myself without a CIDP, and government introduced CIDP. And CIDP is keeping black people out of construction altogether. And yet it was meant, and yet it was introduced as an instrument to empower. As a result, as NAFCOC, we have decided that we should campaign that CIDP must be closed altogether because black business, when I was in construction, I built projects like Gold Reef City. I did not have a CIDP, and it's still standing. I had contractors like Nogela in the Eastern Cape. They built Amtata Hospital. It's still standing without CIDP. This nonsense CIDP must close.
Okay, but what exactly about it is nonsense? Because I think government needs to understand what exactly are you aggrieved about in this regard? No,
because it is based on capital. Your grade remains at a certain level, provided you have got capital to back it. Now, blacks don't have capital, so they cannot sustain a grade 9 if they are out of a contract, because you can't stay having a contract. Now, experience, don't go away. If I have built such a big project, I will stay in that project. So I believe that there are laws that government introduces with an aim. That's why it's important when government introduces a law, the people to whom it's intended to help must be part. They must not do things for us without us.
All right. Mr. CEO, let me get your final remarks.
I guess from my side is parting shots. SMEs, they contribute about a quarter of the economy, around 25%. They projected to grow about to contribute to about 50% in the next coming years. What we're seeing in the market is that the economy is becoming digital. Everyone is using a phone, they're on online platforms. If small businesses are not part of those platforms, they're going to be left behind. So what we're trying to do is to actually encourage them to become part of online platforms that are well networked so that they get access to better funding, to cheap finance, to insurance, bulk procurement by access to markets, which is advertising services, better connectivity, so that they can start playing in this connected economy. If they're not there, they'll be left behind, and we'll be talking about digitizing small businesses in the next 10 years, whereas we could be starting now. And those are my parting shots.
Well, thank you. And Dr. Mazwai, just to wrap it up, you've heard the concerns. What is the response?
No, I mean, obviously, I mean, I think that let us deal with a much more bigger problem, because then that brings in what Mr. Mavundla has said and so on, is that to what extent are the institutions that were created post-democracy committed to black economic empowerment and to the upliftment of our people? And that is the big question that must be answered. And then you then go further to say, some of the people who are in government, in the civil service and so on, do they have the passion to see blacks succeed and so on? So these are the issues that at times I find that I get frustrated because when we're in the liberation struggle, the whole question of political liberation was a passion. We slept, dreamt, and everything about it, even went to jail. But when it comes to economic empowerment, we don't have that same passion, that same zeal. It's as if we've reached the promised land and so on. So I think let us look at it in that big element. To what extent is the overall commitment to black advancement now that we've got political liberation? Now, to what extent is there this overall passion towards black advancement in the economy? And once we can address that, then we'll then realize that we cannot afford to have oligopolies. We cannot afford to have the levels of concentration in our economy. We've got to break down these cartels and make sure that there are more people who come into the economy, because it's only when more people come into the economy that South Africa is going to become a much more stable country.
Well, thank you so much to my panel. And of course, we are going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue, but we will change the topic and a few of the guests as well, because we want to touch on the land question as well. So land expropriation without compensation. What is NAFCOC's view on this? And of course, we'll touch on other players as well and their perspective on this matter. But we'll do that after the break.